one more thing. So let's combine some stuff. Let's see if I put this in my notes. And then this just shows you what you could actually see here on the screen. So it says number, character, logic. There's actually a command in R called class that's really helpful. The other place that you'll run into problems, especially when you start using some of the more higher end functions, let's say for like regression modeling or something, if you ever get a type mismatch, usually it's because it's expecting something to be of a certain class. So like if you have a function and it's expecting a logical value or vector, and you put something in that's a character, it'll come back and fuss at you and go, I don't know what that is. So sometimes there's all this stuff and you have to convert. So sometimes it's helpful to go through and run this class function just to check and see. You think it's supposed to be one way and R's reading it a different way. So if you run each of these, it'll come back and tell you things are numeric, character, logic, etc. And then this just talks about what happens when you mix things up. All right, last thing to show here. So the bread and butter of what we work with are really data frames. So they call these, if you've ever heard anybody refer to it as a rectangular data set, where cases are the rows, your subjects, and then the columns are your variables or all the stuff that you've measured. And we want that to be really nice and clean. We want every row to be the same length, and we want every column to have the same number of cases, right? In a perfect world, if we had complete data and no missing values, it would just, every cell would be filled. Boy, wouldn't that be great? So those are known as data frames. So we could actually create one here really quick. So we can combine Y, which is that vector that we created that just had values in it from 1 to 12. Yep, right there, 1 to 12. And those two objects that were sort of built in, so month name and month abbreviation. So let's try this command. And there is a function called DataFrame. And if I run this, it's going to combine these three things together and put them into one nice table. So when I run this command, not only will I create a new value over here on my global environment, it will actually create something that's a little bit different. So you'll notice now, everything else was called values. Now I've created something called DF1, so data frame 1, and it, shows up in data. So we've got 12 observations, 3 variables. So most of our data is going to look like this. And you'll notice the other thing that shows up in this window is this little box. That's a miniature table. I know it's kind of hard to see. Even on my screen, as close as I am, I can't tell that that's a little table. But if you click on it, it will open. Notice it ran view. Now I can come in here, and that's why I said vectors are a little hard to look at, but data frames make a lot of sense. So now I can actually come in here and see it automatically numbers my rows. Now I've got a column for Y, a column for month name, and a column for month abbreviation. And inside here, you can also do some sorting. This doesn't change the data at all. It's just for viewing. So this is sort of like being in the data viewer window in SPSS, and you can go through, and I think there's a way to do this a little bit in SAS, although sorting in SAS sometimes gets complicated. So that part's easier to see. What else did I have? So we'll be doing more with those. Yeah.
How about if you have one variable, you have 13 observations, and then the other you have 12, so then they were still going to have 13 cases, but with the other two variables.
Right. It'll show up as missing, and I'll admit, handling missing data in R, it's not pretty, but honestly, I don't think it's pretty in any software package. It will default to NA, which comes back and it's not applicable. I'm trying to remember if that's how they interpret it, because NaN means something else. That means not a number, but they'll show up in the table as NA. And I'll try to remember. Maybe I can talk some more about that on Friday. Let's see. Okay, the last thing that I hadn't had a chance to show you guys is a package. So this has become sort of the bread and butter plotting package. And in all honesty, I'm really surprised they haven't gone ahead and just built this in. Like when you install RStudio, ggplot comes along with it. But this is Hadley Wickham's package. It's a really great plotting package. He's in the middle of actually writing the second edition of this book, which comes out I think later this summer. So I was tempted to pre-order it the other day. But there's a couple of ways to install packages. So these are add-ons. So I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this. Have y'all ever seen like the student version of SPSS and then compare it to like what we get as faculty? It's very different. Faculty, we get, the advanced tools. I think we get complex sampling, we get exact tests. And when you really look at our license, we get SPSS and like 20 add-on packages. SAS is the same way. Turns out, did any of you in here use MATLAB? No. So we actually, at least for faculty, we have a site license for MATLAB. MATLAB has like 30, 40 packages. I downloaded it the other day and it was like a gig and a half. It took like 2 hours to download it in my house. But anyway, so ours kind of like that. You have the base package and then you add things on that you are interested in. And there's ways to automate this so that you're not doing it over and over. And once you've installed a package, it's actually physically installed on your hard drive, and then you can walk around with it. But there's 2 steps. So one is you have to install it so that the code is on your computer, and then you have to load it into memory, which is this library function. So you can either run the commands like this, or inside RStudio, let's see, and I can never remember, it's under Tools. So there's a window here under Tools for installing packages. And I've already got it installed, but I could come out here and look for it. And I've been having trouble. My connection, okay, usually as long as it'll recognize, and I think when you install RStudio, it'll default to the CRAN repository, which is where 9 times out of 10, you can actually switch this. So suppose you were doing a ton of stuff in omics and you were going to be working off bioconductor, you could actually add bioconductor here as a repository. And then there's others out there. But CRAN's the main default. So usually when you start typing it in, it'll start giving you a list of stuff. So if I click it here and then say, okay, and pay attention to this. Sometimes it gets hard. I was like, where did it go? For me, it goes to my username, documents are WinLibrary 3.2. It's already installed, but I'll just run it here real quick. This one shouldn't be too bad. Some packages take a lot more to download than others. This one shouldn't be too bad. So it'll actually say it's now doing this, it's installing. It'll run for a minute. And I don't know if you noticed that. See the little red dot that's showing up in the bottom right? That tells me that it's running. It's crunching on something. And sometimes you just have to wait. So it says, yep, it was successful. It downloaded. Everything checked out. So it's sitting there, but I don't have it loaded yet. So the way I load it is I'll run this library command. And then in parentheses, type in the name of the package. So if I want to load that, then I come down here and type in library ggplot2. And it tries to be helpful and says, yes, we know you're looking for it. And then it'll take a minute to run and actually load in memory.
Bottom right, if you click on packages,
yes. So, yeah, you're exactly right. This has a list of everything that's installed on my current drive. And so when I scroll through these, the other way to load it into memory is I can click this little box. So like suppose there was something else like this syntax highlighting. If for some reason I wanted that turned on, I could click it. And that's the same equivalent as running that library command. The other thing that's kind of nice about the packages window is I can click on these, and these are all hyperlinked. So if I click on ggplot, it'll actually take me to the documentation for everything that's in this ggplot package. So the good and bad of this is you kind of got to know where you're going. And let's see if I can show you. So back when, let's see, did I have it up? Is it this one? So in the CRAN project that I showed before, there's a link here for packages. And there's a couple of different ways to look at it. As it says right now, there's over 7,000, almost 8,000 packages now. And by the way, there's another several thousand in Bioconductor, and there's even more out there on GitHub. So you can look at it by date of publication if that's important. Usually you sort them by name, but the other thing that's really helpful if you really have no idea is to come out here to these task views and start looking for people that are doing things in your area. So, I find a lot of stuff in social sciences and in psychometrics because a lot of what we do with like instruments and different kinds of analyses will show up here. There's a ton of stuff about factor analysis out here in the psychometrics modules, other modeling, survival analysis, time series, etc. So sometimes it's helpful to start here if you have no idea what you're looking for. And there's usually pretty good information. And you can just Google. Google is so helpful. All right. So